Guys, and welcome to an episode of Used Review. This time going over the Chevy S10. This one happens to be a 2000 S10 Extreme, low mileage for the age. It has only 130,000 miles on it. I think while driving it today we're going to hit 131,000. This vehicle is powered by the beast of a 2.2 liter 115 horsepower 4-cylinder motor, but it's paired to a 5-speed transmission, which makes it really a delight to drive, all things considered. Let's take a little bit closer look at how this vehicle is aged and the overall features and everything of it. Let's take a closer look right now. So now, since this vehicle is an S10 Extreme, we do have the Extreme air dam on the front of this vehicle with the fog lights. Now, this vehicle came from Arkansas. Not really a whole lot of rust, but you can see the sun's really beat up on it. And that's one of the things about these 2000 black paint jobs from General Motors. They didn't age all that well. You can see that we have some paint cracking. I've seen this on quite a few. A Blazer as well, also the similar age. I want to say that was a 98. Had the same issue. This has it going on the top, but there's no rust anywhere on this vehicle. You see that the clear coat is cooked off of the wheel wells. I think that's happened on 3 of them. But the S10 is a fantastic little truck, in my opinion. It's one of the best around town trucks you can get. It's the perfect size. This one's got the 5.5 foot bed here. You see that paint's cooked off of the edge on that as well. But the 5.5 foot bed really can hold just about everything you need for home improvement. This is my personal vehicle. I've owned it for quite a few years now. I usually use it for hauling motorcycles and things like that. So now, looking at these S10s, one thing I want to point out is you need to be wary of rust in these corners here. This one happens to be in great shape. Underneath as well, you can see just a little bit of surface rust on that guy, but she's really gorgeous otherwise. But most of them you're going to have some rust there. Like I said, you'll get that cracking with the paint on there. A little Extreme case, you can see the roof. There you go. You really kind of see what that looks like. It does not look very good at all. Now, the S10 Extreme, some of these come with a roll pan. This one came with the option of the front bumper, and about the only option that the original owner put on this was the Extreme kit. The inside you're going to see is very bare bones, but that's okay because the electronics are the issue on these 2000s General Motors products, among other things. The S10 really is about as reliable as you can get a General Motors product. Kind of like the Cavalier. You really got to try to kill them. So let's take a closer look at the inside. So now, one thing I do want to mention about a single cab S10, if you're over probably 5'10", 5'8", it's not the most comfortable ride. Now, I have been in this thing for quite a long time. I drove from the Midwest all the way out here to the East Coast. It was doable, but was not easy. You can see that even with the clutch pedal fully depressed, I've still got a good bend in my knee. Brakes are all the way down. And then to go from brake to throttle, it's, I'm fighting the wheel. Knees are against there. This is not adjustable on a base model. Now, I don't know about the other vehicles, but I do know that this steering wheel does not move in this, and I've been in quite a few S10s, and I don't ever remember that being the case. Now, since I'm seated in here, the shifter driving ergonomics, the shifter is great. I absolutely love this little transmission. It kind of makes up for the lack of horsepower up under the hood. But at the end of the day, I mean, it depends on what you're hauling. I've driven through the West Virginia mountains with 2 motorcycles on a trailer and a bed full of parts, and it did it, but it was tough. Oh, and one thing about this transmission is the throws are really weird and clunky. Don't know if you can hear that. Third gear can be hard to find sometimes, especially when you're rolling and you have to go 4th to 3rd. On not a decel situation, like let's say you're going up a large hill or something like that, going 4th to 3rd can be a little bit difficult to find at times. But other than that, it's not a bad place to be for a small truck from the early 2000s. So now, taking a look at the interior on the S10, this thing does suffer from a lot of the common S10 problems. What you're going to get on these cars as they start to age is you're going to get some door pin sag. This one's all right in that department, but I've seen it bad enough that a Chevy Blazer's door won't even open. It's that bad. So these pins, they're not that difficult to replace, but they're not easy either. You're just going to punch those pins out, put it back in, realign your door. Now this suffers from the same thing that all of these 2000s and 90s General Motors products do. You've got this plastic that cracks up here. As you see, I had to replace that center vent right there. Not a big deal, but you're going to see that on a lot of these cars. That speaker over there as well. Now another thing is these continued to crack, and I had to remove this for a project, and pretty much everything broke. So this is the current state of my surround bezel, but I've got it back on. It doesn't really bother me all that much. It's not a daily driver vehicle. So like I said, it's very basic. This one's got the rubber floors, but we do have the console shifter. So now talking about the suspension on the Chevy S10. Now this one obviously is the Extreme, so you've got a little bit different setup. These are the aluminum wheels. You can get steel wheels on these as well, but either way, Extreme, Standard, and even on the Blazer, what you're going to get is some noisy ball joints, both upper and lower. So those are common failure points, and a lot of times a lot of states will fail you on safety inspections and things like that on that. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. But again, it's an old, traditionally built truck, so it's not that hard to replace. So real quick, while we're talking about common problems, we're looking at the front wheel here. You can see we do have disc brakes in the front. You'd expect that out of a modern vehicle. But another problem with these is an ABS module failure. At the rear end of the S10, we're going to be looking at a lot of the same things except for the ball joint issue. So this is obviously leaf spring in the back, so you're going to have some shocks that wear out quite quickly here in the back. You've got drums in the rear, discs in the front. Braking, it's adequate. I mean, it's not anything fantastic. But while we're back here, these metal arches, keep an eye on those because these will rust out as well. If you've got the flares on it, you can always stick your finger underneath there, kind of feel around, see what you've got going on behind the plastic. It's always a good place to check on these older Chevys. Now, looking under the hood of the Chevy S10 Extreme, in this case Extreme, but the S10 in general, is where you're going to start to see some of your common problems with this vehicle. What you're going to get most of the time, and this is almost every time, you're going to get a failure on this computer in here. It's a very, very cheap motor replaced, but that controls your intermittent wiper controls. So sometimes the wipers will work, sometimes they won't. This has experienced that failure. It's very easy, very inexpensive fix, but that's not a big problem. Another one you're going to get with any of these vehicles as they start to age, you're going to have AC compressor failures. That's pretty common on them. Once you get over 15 years old on these General Motors products, you're going to see quite a bit of that. Also, you're going to have fuel level sending unit, the sensor, and the pump problems. These are pretty predominant on these, whether you've got the 4.3 liter or the 2.2 liter, you're going to see a lot of those failures, which you have to drop the tank to get that. So keep that in mind. Always ask if that has been taken care of if you're buying it from somebody who's owned the vehicle for a long time. Other than that, you know, this 2.2 in this really is a beast. This is, from my opinion and the research I've done, it's the better motor to get when you're looking at these Chevy S10 products. And this goes for the Blazer as well. A lot of these facts that I'm saying are going to transfer over to that, because in reality, that's the same vehicle that's just got the closed cab on the back of it. Now, it's very basic in here. You do have your ECU over here. Everything's very easy to get to. It's built like an old truck, so you don't really have a whole lot of stuff to worry about. They are known for having the heater core failures, so you can get a leak down there in the footwell, but you're going to get that really on anything that starts to get over 15 years old. So it's just going to come down to what the condition of the vehicle is. Oil leaks, they piddle. They like to do that as they start to age, as things start to dry out. You're going to get a bit of oil leaks from this thing. Oil consumption, it's not as bad when you're getting up in the mileage. I'm talking 150 to 180 to 200,000 miles. You're not going to be burning as much oil as you're going to see out of a Toyota truck with a similar 2.2. The 4.3s, you don't see those lasting as long as you see with these 4 cylinders from my experience, which that's okay with me. If you live somewhere where you can get away with it, drop a V8 into this. That's my plan for this. If I'm going to keep it long term, I'm going to put a nice little LS1 in it. But other than that, it's just going to be little electronics problems, speaker failures, plastic failures, little stuff that's going to annoy you. But if you're looking for a truck that's going to get you around, like for me, this is just doing chores around the house and hauling motorcycles. It does a fantastic job at it. Now we're going to go for a ride. You're going to notice the windows are going to be down because it's hot and the AC don't work. The jiggly GM ignition. So now this is the second generation of the Chevy S10. Now this vehicle premiered, I want to say in 1984. This second generation came out in 94 and ran all the way up until 2002, 2004, something like that. I'll have to put the notes there on the screen. And this one, I don't know, I like the box style too. And actually when they went from the 2.8 liter Iron Duke that they ran in the first generation S10 to this 2.2 that they put in a lot of these second generation S10s, you lost a bit of horsepower, about 20 horsepower due to emissions and then downsizing the engine as well. But like I said, you don't really notice it too much with this short gearing on the transmission. The S10, it's not a blast to drive. It's not a sports car by any means. But when you're talking about maybe a similar sized Toyota Tacoma or Ford Ranger or something like that, this is the better truck in my opinion. The S10 is just a great all-around little truck. So now they did run this body style for quite some time, and with minor upgrades to the chassis, or not the chassis so much as the body throughout the years, that, you know, it was still, at the end of the day, it was an S10. And even from the first generation to the second generation, the chassis didn't change all that much. Now when they came out with the second generation, it was a little disappointing that they dropped the Typhoon, that beautiful twin turbo V6 model that they had, Typhoon, Cyclone, that you know, whether it was the GMC Sonoma or the Chevy S10, you lost both of those. And also, that's another thing. So this vehicle was sold all around the world under a handful of different names. In the United States, the Chevy product was the Chevy S10. The GMC was the GMC Sonoma. And you also had the Isuzu Hombre on there as well. I do not believe that the Hombre was ever offered with the 4.3 liter V6 motor. Now we're going to try to find a stretch where I can really kind of open this girl up. Now we should have a little bit more space to open her up. Let's use all 115 horsepower here. Get a little space between me and this other car. Red line. And we run out of space again. I don't even think I broke the speed limit. But you know what? But it's fun. You know, you're always engaged with the manual transmission. Now, if this was an automatic, I think we're going to be having a whole different conversation. It just doesn't give you enough involvement besides just constantly putting your foot through the floor. So that's where I needed to turn. I'm going to go up here. Hopefully this came out all right. I'm having a little bit of a mic issue, so I'm using a makeshift situation here. But I love the Chevy S10. There's a reason you still see these things in the Southwest and a lot of arid places where they're on the road quite often. Unless they rust out, they generally keep going with only minor annoyances more than anything else. So if you're looking at it, I tried to go over all of the major items, check your boxes, make sure that it's the one for you, and I think you're going to be all right with it. But overall, the drive of the Chevy S10 is really reliable. It's what you would expect from a little underpowered pickup truck. Rather smooth. You know, now once you get it loaded down, I've had quite a bit of weight in this thing before. It's not as much of a delight to drive once you get some weight in her. But other than that, a little bit of bounce, drives like an old truck. But she's really easy to go around town with. So now I was talking earlier about that ABS failure that you get on these. Now one thing to keep in mind if you're looking to purchase an S10, which probably if you're looking to purchase an S10 and if you're doing research on an old S10, you probably already know most of the stuff that I've been talking about, but it's what I had, it's what I'm going to put out there. I'm just trying to get as much comprehensive information where you don't have to scour the internet, scour forum posts from 10, 15 years ago when these trucks were popular. But that ABS problem, it's not always going to present itself. every now and then you'll get the failure. Other than that, the ABS works great. So that's something to keep in mind. Always ask the seller if they've had any problems with the ABS, if they've had anybody look at the module, things like that. Because it's not an instant one and done. Like it comes and goes. The lights will be fine. The lights won't be fine. It's just something to keep in mind.